Never be afraid to ask, or really, in a sense, demand of your friends moral judgment. I mean, I would argue they can't really be your friends if they can't exercise moral judgment, right? So, who would have a conflict with Bob, have an issue with Bob, and let's say I'm talking to Bob, and my friend is like, oh, you're holding a grudge. It's like, okay, who was in the right? Who was in the right? Now, if my friend says, oh, Bob was in the right, then I would say, well, why didn't you tell me that at the time? Or why didn't you try and intervene at the time and help me do better? If you made a good case for Bob being in the right. And if he says, well, Bob was in the wrong, then it's like, well, if Bob was in the wrong and I tried to talk about it with him and I couldn't resolve it and I decided to move on, then how is that holding a grudge? That's making a decision based upon, reasonable moral absolutes. All right. Yeah, but don't, and if the person won't, well, I don't want to make a decision, I don't want to, right? If you have a really wishy-washy friend who, if you have a fairly significant conflict with someone and that person won't even take a side, then I would say that's kind of important, right? Can you really have a friend who can't make any particular moral decisions? I would say not really. So, holding a grudge is when, I assume it's basically when you keep a petty difference or opposition to someone without any sort of foundational moral justification. Okay, well, then if somebody says you're holding a grudge, say, okay, well, who was in the right, who was in the wrong in this conflict? And you can, obviously go over the details and feel free to talk to Bob. But, you're going to have to come to some kind of decision, right? And if it turns out that Bob was in the right and I was unjust, then I will apologize to Bob and work to fix things up. If it turns out that I was in the right and Bob was in the wrong, then don't accuse me of holding a grudge anymore. Just this kind of stuff as a whole. So, yeah, just try not to stay on the receiving end of these kinds of judgments and put them back on the person judging you. If somebody's judging you as being morally deficient because you're holding a grudge, then have them spell out their moral reasons.